All right, Kurt.
Yes.
Kurt, where'd you grow up?
I grew up in a suburb right outside the city of Chicago, called Elmwood Park. Spent a lot of time, grew up there. I lived there. I moved back there when I got married.
Elmwood Park is a mob-heavy suburb of Chicago.
Yes, a lot of well-known mob people lived there, and it was a safe community, especially because they didn't want any crime there because they lived there. There was a few instances, but for the most part, it was a great community, great people. You leave the door open. I loved growing up that way, and I miss that.
And your dad was part of the mob, right?
Yes. My father was a made member of the mob. He was vicious. I referred to him as a monster. He was the boogeyman. He was the guy that would hide under your bed or hide in your closet. That's what I thought of my father. He was just a mean, serious man who, unfortunately, brought the mob into the house. And that's a no-no from people that I know that families were involved. Who would want to get their kids involved in a life like that? Who would demand your son, me, being brought into something that he knew I wanted nothing to do with? In fact, he referred to me as sad sack. When the tapes, they had recordings in prison when Junior wore the wire, and he referred to me as sad sack. I thought that was a great name because if you looked at my face, I'm never smiling. When I'm around my dad, not smiling, not happy, didn't want to live. My father made me not want to live. That's how bad it was.
Even as a kid?
As a kid, and it's hard to talk about because people look at me and say, oh, you're going to go and talk about, I cried myself to sleep at night when I was a kid. I used to pray to God to take me because I don't want to live like this anymore. And I'm talking about, as a kid, I'm talking about 7, 8, 9, 10 years old. And it's unfortunate because, nobody should have to live like that. Nobody.
Your dad was a very well-known mobster in Chicago.
Yeah, he had a very serious reputation. People in his world were uncomfortable around him. People would get up and leave places where he would go into because they were scared of him. And it was what I realized now is they didn't even know. I didn't know, and they didn't know what he was capable of doing. He had done it, but they didn't talk about it. Nobody talked about it. But people were afraid of him. They had heard or this or that. And he was a serious man. He would raise his hands at the drop of a hat for something as simple as moving something on a table. I didn't want it there. He just lash out. And I, fortunately, was the brunt of most of it. And I spent a lot of time with my dad. I was part of that world. I was brought into that world. Didn't want to be part of that world because I don't want to be part of anything my father was part of because he just wasn't a nice person. Couldn't trust him. And so I didn't, that life was glorious in that neighborhood where I grew up. And I was pretty good at it. I followed rules the right way.
What kind of stuff did your dad have you doing?
Collecting money, going back to when we were 14, 15 years old, we were collecting quarters from the porn shops. I was meeting people on the street for him, giving out money, collecting money. I ran pretty much any family business that we were involved in. He wanted me to do the bookwork for the bookkeeping for the juice loan. That was the first experience. When he asked me if I would do that, that was probably 14, 15 years old. And it's the only time my father ever asked me to do anything. And it was the last time he ever asked because he usually demands. He doesn't ask. He doesn't ask you to do it. He tells you to do it. So I walked away. I was able to get out of there the first time. Second time, get your ass upstairs. I'm going to show you the business. So I started doing that at 14, 15. Same with collecting the quarters at the porn shops and doing that. And then gradually, as I got older, gradually bringing me into more. But always with a fight. I did not want to do it. I did not want to be around it. It wasn't, being around him wasn't for me. My father the beatings that I got from my dad, again, I know people don't understand that, and my father ruled with an iron fist. I got beat up for nothing. All the time. I mean, in restaurants, at home, on the street. He was just careful not to do it in front of people, but he couldn't help himself. So there were times when he lost his temper and people saw it. But I didn't talk about it with people. My friends growing up, I grew up hung out in a place called the Circle in Elmwood Park. And what guys that don't know that grew up with me is that was my therapy. I mean, I was able to get out. I was able to hang with my friends. I was able to, get in a little mischief, nothing serious, just growing up. But those guys were my family. And when I left the house to get away from that, I ended up there. And I enjoyed it. And like I said, even my friends there didn't know what was going on. They didn't know what was going on in the house. I didn't talk about it. So, but.
Just describe your dad for us. What did he dress like? What was he like with his?
Well, he had closets of very nice clothes, but lots of times he would dress in shirt, pair of jeans, baseball hat. The difference, like in New York and in Chicago, in New York, everybody's a wise guy. There's hundreds of guys that are wise guys. In Chicago, and everybody dresses the part, which is, that's the way that they do it. Chicago was different, and, you wanted to blend in. You didn't want to stand out, you wanted to blend in. So driving Fords, driving Chevys, no fancy cars. My father got whistled in. He bought my mother a car.
I used to do Google searches for my own name, and I was always really disturbed what I'd find. Seeing my personal information out there for anyone to grab, it's just uncomfortable. That's why I've started using Aura, the sponsor of today's video. Aura not only shows me which data brokers are peddling my info, but also takes action by sending opt-out requests on my behalf. Data brokers are making a fortune by selling our personal information to anyone willing to pay for it. It's not just harmless information and marketing stuff. They're selling everything from your email, home address, to your health records, even details about your relatives. Cleaning up my digital footprint isn't just avoiding scam emails. It's about protecting myself from potential hackers who could exploit that information and wreak havoc on my life. And recently, AT&T revealed that over 73 million customer records of both existing and former customers were released onto the dark web. They recommend those affected use strong passwords, monitor account activity, and consider credit freezes or fraud alerts from credit bureaus. Well, Aura does all of this for me. And best of all, I don't have to download several different apps just because a company couldn't keep my data secure. If my info was compromised in the AT&T data breach, I wouldn't worry because Aura is always on, always doing the hard work of keeping me safe. From antivirus protection to VPN and password management, Aura's got it all covered. It's like having a digital security guard on duty 24/7. I'm too busy to deal with this stuff, but with Aura, I can go about my day knowing that my privacy is being safeguarded, leaving me free to focus on what really matters. So if you value your privacy as much as I do, go to aura.com/softwhiteunderbelly to start your 14-day free trial. The link is in the video description box below. And now back to the video.
Brought my mother a car by his boss, who was actually my ex-wife's grandfather, his name was Angelo LaPietra. He was a boss in Chicago. And that's how I ended up getting married to my ex-wife, because I used to bring bread down there on Sundays to her house. That was a job I had. My father had made me bring fresh bread every Sunday to their house. Other houses too, but when I tell people that story, they're like, what's the point? I said, I don't know. I just had to bring it every Sunday. And then little by little, me and my ex-wife became closer, and we ended up getting married, and nobody wanted us to get married. My father said no. Her family was saying no, and her grandfather was in prison at the time, and he wouldn't say no because he was sending word to my father to control me behind the scenes and telling me to stay away from her. Well, we ended up getting married. It wasn't good. We had a lot of problems. My life was threatened. I got a real nice beating from my father the night I told him about it. My father was supposed to be out of town, and I was dating my ex-wife but she was divorced. And my father said, no, you can't be with her. And her family said, no, you guys can't be together. I was 30 years old. I mean, I was a man in that world on that side, but now I want to get married to someone and they're telling me, no, you can't. And so we went to City Hall, got married. And my father was supposed to be out of town, but he called me that night. He used to call me 20 times a day. And that night, and he was back in town. And he wanted me to come meet him, and I didn't know if I should go or not because I was scared. And I went and met him, and I was in a Dunkin' Donuts, and he got me to drop my guard, which was, I still to this day don't know why I did, but he got me to drop my guard, and I told him Angela and I went and got married. And he did not, I never saw a look on my father's face where he did not know what to do. And he just didn't know what to do. And once it settled in, there was nobody in the Dunkin' Donuts but me, him, and the worker who was in the back. And as soon as it settled in, I was sitting on a stool at the counter, and he just hauled off and he cracked me. I fell down. He kicked me a couple times. Got up. He left. I left. And 2 seconds later, he turned around and started chasing me down the street in my car. And there were cell phones at the time. I had a cell phone. I called my wife, who was my wife as of that day, and said, hey, I don't know if this was such a good idea because he's chasing me right now. And I was going 100 miles an hour down a busy street and hoping that a cop would pull me over because I didn't know how to get away from him. But I ended up losing him. But I had to hide for a couple of days after that because that's how serious it was. These people were talking about hurting me. And then I had to go sit down and talk to Brother Jimmy, who was Angelo's brother, who was not a nice person either. And I had to go sit down and have a sit down with him. And, this man started yelling at me and banging his fist on the table. And again, I'm supposed to show respect, but I couldn't sit there and have him do that in front of my wife, who's now my wife, and in front of his wife, yelling at me and banging on the table. So I asked him if we can sit alone and talk, and we did. And, some things were said. And, these were serious people, though. These were people that would kill you. And as something as stupid as us getting married, I put myself in danger. I put my family in danger. Put my father, my uncle in danger, which I never thought of. I thought I'll take responsibility. I did it. Somebody's got a problem. I'll deal with it. I'm just saying, as a man, I'll deal with it. Well, it wasn't that simple. But, and I didn't know that till years later when my uncle came home. My Uncle Nick, who passed not too long ago with my mother. I lost my mother and my uncle within like 3 months. My uncle was like a dad to me, and my mom was everything to me. So I haven't been the same since. But my uncle was a stand-up person who got put in the middle of stuff. My father brought him to a murder and didn't tell my uncle where he was going. And that was the first time. My uncle went to my dad and asked him to get involved to make some money, get involved with the juice loan business to make some money. My uncle was in the Navy. My uncle had a soldier mentality. And my father took advantage of his own brother, which till this day I have a chip on my shoulder about. Because how do you do that to your brother? If other guys want to do that to strangers, you want to be involved in the mob, okay, I don't have to tell you anything, just show up. It's your own brother. I mean, he had him show up a place where he killed a guy, my dad killed a guy, and now my uncle was involved whether he wanted to be or not. And my dad knew my uncle wouldn't leave. He knew he was loyal to him, but my dad took advantage of it. My dad took advantage of everyone in his life.
Your
his
uncle
family.
was your dad's brother?
Yes.
Yeah.
He was also made in the Chicago mob. Between him and my dad and other crews of guys, they killed a lot of people. And they were very good at what they did. My feelings about my dad are my feelings. And if I heard somebody else talking about him, I wouldn't appreciate it. But I can talk about him because he was my dad and what he did. But he was very good at what he did. I think he enjoyed killing because the last thing he did after he did to you, whether stabbed you, beat you, shot you, is he cut your throat to make sure you were dead. I mean, even in that world, them guys don't do that. I mean, he was a killer. He was and from what I understand, in his lifetime, when my mother married him, and she, and I say to her, Ma, how would you marry this man? And she said, he wasn't that man when we got married. And I got a lot of regret when my mother passed because, I'm a man, and my father tried to take that from me. But he treated my mother so poorly that I didn't do anything about it. And that bothers me because as a man, in the world that I was raised in, you protect women and you protect children. My mom didn't get that pass. And, I kind of wish my father was still here so I can do something to him for what he did to my mom, what he did to his family, what he did to me. This affected my whole family. This affected my kids. And I'm tired of the lies being told. I'm tired of it. Frank Jr., who is my blood brother, I can't, he's dead to me. I'm done. And you'll see through this, you'll see why I can't deal with it no more. I mean, he didn't care who he hurt. He didn't care who he put in the middle. He stole a lot of money from my father that I was responsible for. Close to $2 million, maybe more. I said conservatively $1.5 million. I was putting money in the safety deposit boxes for my dad. And we put it in manila envelopes, and I was helping him stuff the envelopes. But he'd insult you and tell me that I don't know what's in those envelopes, and I was stuffing them with them. But that was my dad. It was insulting because I never questioned. And if that's what you thought, fine. I'm not gonna. It's not worth it. Say anything back to my father wasn't worth it. You'd get punched, kicked, stuff thrown at you. But
how was that kind of money being made?
Well, he had a lot of money on the street. I think. He had a lot of money. He worked jobs his whole life. My father did. Legitimate jobs. And I don't know what he did after that, in between that and becoming part of that. I know my father got whistled in because he was lending out money. That's how he got whistled in by the mob. And but it was, I would put these envelopes on me. He would be there with me. I would put these envelopes in my waistband and my pants. I would put them in my pockets. I would put them in my socks, one on each side. Not once, 3 or 4 envelopes. I had a sport coat that I wore. I had an overcoat that I wore. He said, every time you go to the bank, you got to make sure you look like a professional person, which at the time I was a BA for the union, and I was dressing that way anyways. But, at any given time, I probably had $100,000 on me. And we had a lot of heat on us at that time, a lot. And so I, just out of the blue, I asked my father, because I was watching and being careful, but I asked my dad, I said, Dad, if I get pulled over, they're going to take this money. Okay, what do you want me to say? And he's looking at me, and I said, I'm not going to say anything, but they're going to take the money. And I know that's your money. You're not going to be happy. What do you want me to say? His answer to me was, don't get pulled over. And at that point, I knew that I meant nothing, and that everything meant that money. So at that point, I knew, and once I figured out, what happened was I never went to the bank. I never went back to the bank after that to bring money. I never went back. I said, I'm not risking getting pulled over with this money, and he's going to hold me accountable for it, and I don't want to be held accountable for it. I actually, at that time, I was gradually getting away from my father. Gradually, plan was to get away from him. And so the money that I was supposed to bring to the banks, I put into a hockey bag. And it became so full, the hockey bag, that I couldn't pick it up. I had to drag it. And it's like, okay, now I don't know what's in every one of those envelopes, but I got a pretty good idea, thicker, thinner, the boxes, how big the boxes were that I was bringing the money to. He'd ask me, is it a bigger box, a smaller box? Because I went and got the boxes. Under an alias, I went and got the boxes. And so there were 5 boxes or 6 boxes. There were 5 or 6 boxes. And because I never went back to bring that other money, some of those boxes were empty. Well, my father kept asking me every time. I'd meet him, my dad, 3 times a day sometimes, 2, 3 times a day. I had to go meet him and listen and sit and listen to him, and yell at me and call me names and tell me how stupid I was. And I remember telling my brother about the money because I said, God forbid something happens to me. They're not going to know where the money's at. So I told my brother it was in a hockey bag, top of the garage at our house, which had an alarm on it. And I really, really thought that I could trust my brother. I thought we went through a lot together because of my dad. My uncle was always there for us. So I thought if anybody knew the seriousness of this, it was Frank Jr. And Frank Jr. didn't care that now that money is gone, now I'm responsible for it. He lied to me when I asked him about it. He swore on his kids that he didn't touch the money. Then I found out a few weeks later that he gave my mother some of the money, and he gave my younger brother Nicky some of the money. And what bothered me most about that is the money was in the envelopes that he gave them, the same envelopes. That was where the money was. They showed it to me, and that was the money that was supposed to go in the bank. And what bothered me is what he did to my brother Nicky by telling my dad Junior had to tell him that he gave my mom and he gave my brother Nicky some money, and my father wanted it back. Well, at that point, it really didn't make a difference if he got that money back because he said he spent all of it anyways. So why did he have my mother get involved, and why did he have my brother Nicky get involved? And my father bothered them, wanted the money back, and he told my father that Junior told my father that he actually gave him more money than he actually gave him. So now you threw him under the bus because my father's not going to believe my brother Nicky. He's going to believe Frank Jr. So he wanted the money, which is petty, but it's just part of what I dealt with, and that's why I'm done with him. And I have to, for my own well-being and my thought process, I need to tell this story.
How did you finally get out of it?
My father came to the house one morning at about 5 o'clock in the morning. I lived a block and a half from Junior. And my father came to the house and he said, let's go. We're going to the bank to get the money. So I said, okay. And he was testing me at that point. I think he figured it out, but he was testing me. He said, well, look, I said, Dad, all the money's not in the bank. And he said, where is it? And I said, well, then I tell him the story. And he said, let's go down to your brother's house right now. And my brother Junior was avoiding my dad. My dad kicked Junior to the curb years before this because he couldn't trust him and he didn't want him around. Again, he was lucky because we had to pick up the slack on what he was helping with, me and my uncle, which was fine because I trusted him, he trusted me. But it's just not, I don't know, I feared for my life, put it this way. We walked to my brother's house, he knocked on the door, caught him early enough where he couldn't leave out of a back door or anything and came out. And my father said to him, where's the money? You took the money? And he said, no, I didn't, Dad, no, I didn't. And I was standing right there. He said, yes, you did. And I'm like, and he looked at me and I said, I didn't tell you he took the money. I told you the money was gone. I asked him. He told me he didn't take it. My father took that as I'm defending my brother. I always defended my brother. He was my brother back then, Frank Jr. I always defended him. I always looked out for him. Same with my younger brother. I still can't believe he did that to me. And I still can't believe what he doesn't understand about my father. My father would hurt you over simple things. Money was his God. You take his money, you're going to deal with the wrath. And again, I seen him over little money. I seen him get crazy over little money, millions of dollars now. And when he ended up cracking my brother, and my brother went down on the ground, and my father said, okay, he came clean, and he said, okay, Dad, I took it, and there were tears in his eyes, and I felt bad watching this happen to him. But my dad, that wasn't good enough for my father. No, he just admitted to taking the money. My father looked at me and he said, "See, stupid, I told you he took it and you were defending him." I wasn't defending anybody. A guy tells me, swears on his life, swears on his kids. He didn't take the money. I can tell you what he said. I can't say he took the money. He did take the money. But I just still couldn't do that. Still couldn't say, hey, he took the money here, because I wasn't, it's not in my makeup to tell on somebody. I took beatings in my life from my father because I wouldn't tell on somebody. This was my brother at the time that went through all this stuff with me. But, it was different. He wasn't there for me. He wasn't, and that's why, he's dead to me.
The Chicago mob is very violent, right?
Yes.
It's maybe doesn't have the same reputation New York does, but it's a very violent subculture in Chicago, and then also the cops are sometimes part of the problem too.
Yes, knew a lot of policemen growing up, older policemen who were around. But in the interview I did with Michael, I had mentioned that Michael Franzese. I mentioned that I knew who killed Sam Giancana, and it was Tony Accardo. And a lot of people out there don't believe that because of where it came from. My uncle told me, I told Junior, but I told Junior, you can't tell anybody this because this is not public knowledge. And Junior immediately went on the TV to do an interview and talked about it. And the sad thing is he didn't even have enough sense to admit how he knew. He claimed my father told him, which common sense tells you if my father told him, it would have been on the front page of the book he wrote. So he didn't know. And again, I'm not proud or bragging about, but he lied about that too, because it's I don't know why he lied about it, but my uncle passed, and normally I wouldn't talk about something like this, and I did not want to implicate him, but yeah, he's the one that told me, and a lot of people out there, like I said, aren't going to believe it, don't want to believe it, but it's the truth, and my uncle told me the story, and it's the truth. So I just wanted to clarify that because a lot of people ask that question. Now you got your answer. Unfortunately, it didn't come from me when you first heard it. It came from Junior, but I was the one that told him. And again, it's no big deal, but a lot of people wanted to know, and the reason he was able to do it is because Sam Giancana trusted him. So, these people said he was too old, this, that, but like I said, it came from somebody who knew. So, my uncle told me a lot of things my dad and my uncle, but my dad mostly went to Angelo to get the okay to bring us into the family business, or bring me into the family business, Junior too. And it bothered me because these people are making decisions in my life, and these people aren't looking out for me. And here my father went to Angelo, and because my father's crew, or my father and part of his crew, were part of killing people. And my father was very good at it. And when he told Angelo what he wanted to do, my father wanted to create a crew just to do that. And he said that my uncle told me, my father said to Angelo, I'm bringing who I want to bring. I'm not bringing who you're telling me to bring. I'm bringing who I trust, because he had guys showing up. They were drinking, to kill people. My father said, no, that's not going to be like that anymore. And he could at the time because he was doing a lot of the heavy work. So he was able to say, hey, I want to do it this way. And that's a little scary to me because I don't know what that meant. I didn't know how far he was going to bring us. And before we went to prison, my father was looking to burn a restaurant that my brother put money into because the guy wasn't paying him. And he was looking at hurting somebody that he said to me, now that you told your brother where that money was, you're responsible for that money and you're obligated to me the rest of your life. So there were two things that I thought were going to be done before I left, and it scared me because that's not me. I'm not that guy. So it scared me, but it didn't happen. And Ronnie Jarrett, I saw Ronnie before I left, and I asked him, because I knew he would have been part of it. And I said, Ron, he said, don't worry about it, Kurt. It's not going to happen. You're not going to be part of it. I said, okay, thank God, because it scared me. I mean, I would have done it, but now I wouldn't. But then I would have, because I was obligated. You know, I was played like a pawn in a chess game. I was used like a pawn, and it's frustrating. But anyhow.
But you were telling me how you got out.
Oh, so out of
the whole mob lifestyle.
Okay, so I went to prison in 99. January of 99, I went to prison, 2 years. Pled out to 2 years so that my father, Junior, and my uncle could get pleas on our case. I had no intentions of pleading out. My lawyer told me, we go to trial alone, we'll beat them. You go to trial with your dad, your brother, your uncle, and the other 5 guys, you're going to get found guilty. So he was trying to sever me from the case. At the end of the day, I think the guy sold me out. I think my lawyer sold me out at the time to the government, because he came back with a deal that said, if you don't take the deal, they don't get their deals. Like it was strategically thought out. And the FBI knew I wasn't going to leave my family hanging out out to dry. They knew I would take the deal immediately, because they knew me as a person because of all the crap I dealt with. And so it was, when I came home from prison, I got a phone call from a guy by the name of Ronnie Jarrett, who worked for my dad. Ronnie was a serious guy, and he was part of my father's crew. And whenever there was a murder, he was always there with my dad. He was a little guy, but he was a serious man. And he called me to come meet him, to talk to him. Now, when I came home from prison, I got a message to my dad that I'm done. When I left, between my family, my father, and between my ex-wife's family, at that time, my family should have been taken care of, because I went to prison for my dad. My family should have been taken care of. We didn't get a penny from either one of our families. Not a penny. When I was gone, not a penny. And before I left, Angelo LaPitra, my wife's grandfather, showed up at my house. I had people by my house because they were coming to say goodbye. I was leaving. And he came by the house and he told me when he left, as I watched him pull up with the FBI following him, when he left, I walked outside with him, and he told me, it was funny because you got to understand the mentality of these people. He told me that when I come home, I have obligations. And now that means when you come home, you're going to be responsible to me now. Your dad's not here. My dad left. I drove my father to prison in Milan, Michigan. Drove 3.5 hours, 4 hours. Was hoping that I would get some, what's the word I'm looking for, closure with my dad. I was hoping that in that ride we can have a conversation and he could maybe tell me that he's proud of me, that I was always there for him, that I helped him, that I never said no to him. The only thing he told me that had any substance to it was Junior was already in the prison. And we knew that, and he knew that. And as he got out of the car, he told me, the reason they're putting me here with your brother is because they're going to try to get your brother to cooperate against me. How do I make sense out of that now, after he talked the way he talked on tapes with Junior? My father wasn't that guy. My father drove everyone crazy with not talking on phones, not talking to people, talking in code. Drove you crazy with that. And, we dealt with that our whole lives. And he, for him to drop his guard and talk to, of all people, to talk to Junior about that, who he claimed he didn't trust, I don't know. I don't know why that happened or how that happened, but he did what he did. And when Junior came home and told me what he did, I didn't believe him. I didn't believe Junior when he told me my father spoke like that on tapes. I said, there's no way. And I went into the court because I needed to hear what went on. I'm not going to read in the paper. And the opening day of the Family Secrets trial, the jury selection, well, I had been threatened numerous amount of times right before and during the trial. In my house in Elmwood Park, before I moved, there were 2 rats put on my doorstep with nooses around their necks, white rats. But they weren't dead. They were supposed to be dead. That's the message. The message is, but I had nothing to do with cooperating. Nothing to do with it. And Junior did. And I was getting threatened. My family was getting threatened. Other people's families weren't getting threatened, which I didn't know how to take. And I don't know. I know who wanted those threats made, but I don't know who actually brought them to my house. I lived up north in the northern suburbs, and the day of the jury selection, there was a fake bomb found on my porch. And it's unfortunate because it's a small community up there. Well, they shut the whole community down because of this fake bomb. And all of a sudden, it was national news. And that's the last thing I wanted. I didn't want anything to do with any of this stuff. The press was on my front lawn. They did an interview from there that said I was in the witness protection program, which couldn't be more than untrue. And they knew that. People knew that. So I had to go back to my house to address, because they're putting my life in danger saying I'm in the witness protection program. I had never had anything to do with the federal government cooperating witness protection program. Junior said I was in a safe house when that happened. Couldn't be more of a lie. And this is stuff that bothers me because it's personal to me. What I did, I'm proud of what I did. I was a man. In my world, I was a man. I didn't tell on nobody. I was there. I helped people. When I came home, like I said, this Ronnie Jarrett showed up. I met him. I was at the halfway house still, which I should not have been going to meet this gentleman because they could have violated me like that. But if I didn't show up, I was going to have him looking for me. So best bet was to go and take my chances. And we sat and we talked. He told me he got a message from my dad that, you got to get back in the program. And I said, well, he said, don't put me in the middle. I said, well, you're putting yourself in the middle, Ron. I'm not putting you in the middle. I said, but I want you to do something for me. I said, to understand where I'm coming from, I want you to do something for me. I want you to go back and ask your wife, because I used to see them and bring them money to help out, because Ronnie was in prison for a long time. So I was seeing his wife bring in money for my dad, and his wife saw my father, how his temper was and how he was, and she saw him, knock me around a couple of times. And so I told him, I said, Ron, I don't mean to be the bearer of bad news, but I'm done. And I said, Ron, when I was away, do you remember when you were away? I said, we made sure your family had money every month. And I did the books with my dad and my uncle. There were times when my dad said, there's no money here for you this month, which was a lie, because I'm counting the money. I'm doing the paperwork. I see what's coming in. I see what came in last month. And he said, no, there's no money there. Well, my uncle and I would make sure we took the money and brought it to Ronnie's wife. And I had to tell Ronnie's wife, listen, if my father comes here and asks you if you got your money this month, you got to say no. And she looked at me like, what do you, I said, we're making sure you get this. You can't tell my dad though, because if you do, I'm gonna have a problem. Well, Ronnie went home and talked to his wife, and she explained to him all the stuff. And, unfortunately, and here's the outcome of what could have happened. Ronnie got killed it was right around Christmas when I first came home. And I went back on the street with him. That either would have been him and I, or him and I separately, but I would have probably been one who would have gotten killed too. Whoever the message was from, and whoever, my father didn't know. He called my mother's house on Christmas, and we told him what happened, and he had no idea that this guy was getting killed. And we had no idea where it came from. And that was his guy. That was my dad's guy on the street. So that was, there was a lot of things going through my mind then. I mean, are they going to come after us? Are they going to come after me? Are they going to? And when Junior came home from prison, told me what he did, I said, people aren't going to be happy. And he said, don't worry about it. I'll take care of it. And I said, what do you mean? He said, I'm not going anywhere. I'll take care of it. And I said, That wasn't Junior. He wasn't that guy. But he said he would take care of it, and then I don't remember if it was a month, two. He got on a plane, he moved to Arizona. So basically he left everybody in Chicago to deal with the mess that he created. And what people don't understand is that case was started by Frank Jr. My uncle got put into that case because of what Frank Jr. did. Frank Jr. never takes responsibility for what he did. He blames my uncle. He says, oh, well, I had nothing to do with putting that guy or that guy in jail. I just had a problem with my father. But the truth is he started the whole case. He did it intentionally. He knew before he went away what he was going to do. It was all about making a buck. He had a million excuses to what his problem was with my dad. But unfortunately, his house got foreclosed on. All the money that he stole, he had none of it left. Didn't pay off his house. They were in foreclosure. My ex-wife and my kids took his wife, who at that time was divorcing him, in to the house to live with us because they had nowhere to go. And that became a problem because my ex-sister-in-law was out dating people before the divorce was even dry. And I had people come and visit me that were telling me, hey, she's dating this guy, and what do you want? What do you want us to do? I said, mind your own business. If her ex-husband's okay with it, mind your own business. And my niece and my nephew, who I adore, we watched. I wasn't there. I was in prison at the time, but my ex-wife saw how the mother was treating these kids, and it was just horrible. I mean, it was horrible, and I can't forget that. I unfortunately, because of the relationship with Junior, I don't get to see but they showed up they came from my mother's services. They came in from Arizona for family services, and which is heartbreaking because Junior didn't come. Junior didn't come to my mother's services, and that's fine. It was better for everybody involved, but I don't know how people live with themselves. And when my uncle passed, Junior wasn't welcome there. It was a very private thing, and Junior wasn't welcome there. Other people weren't welcome there too. There was people out trying to stir up trouble, looking for press. So I couldn't even enjoy my uncle's wake. I had to watch the door and make sure nobody came in there that wasn't welcome there. And my aunt, who's an unbelievable person, my cousins, they're the best. And but when I lost my uncle and lost my mother, I feel like a huge part of me died, because those were the people that, I trusted. Those were the people that, I had the best of both worlds. I had the best mother in the world and the worst father. That's reality. And
you claim to have PTSD now. Is that mostly from your childhood with your dad or from the mob experiences?
It's probably both. More of my father, more of the CPTSD, which I was diagnosed with some years back, has got a lot to do with childhood trauma, abuse, almost everything on that checklist I deal with every day, which is scary because I don't think anybody looks at something and, oh my God, I have that, all these symptoms. And I saw therapists. I've been seeing therapists since, I was told not to. I was told, you can't go to a therapist, you can't talk to a therapist. And I was also told, too bad, deal with it. Well, I went and saw a therapist, but when they figured out who I was and where I was coming from, these are regular people, these are human beings. They got scared too. I had one therapist who wouldn't even come out of her office to talk to me because it was on the news. And I said, but I told you all of this stuff. What do you, no, it scared them. And, these are professional people that are supposed to be helping you, and it scared them. But I had some good therapists, but the CPTSD is getting worse, and I'm trying to do something to bring a light to it. There's some guys that I'm involved with. I'm starting a podcast with a gentleman, and we're going to talk about mental illness. It's going to be geared on mental illness and talk about, my life and his life, but it's rough. It's rough. It's making it harder for me to talk, find my words. So I hope, people can understand. I'm struggling with my words, but I'm telling the story the way it really happened. So it's important to me that people understand.
How many years has it been since you were involved in that lifestyle?
I came home from prison in 2000, so since 2000. And I see people, there's a lot of people out there that don't know that I have nothing to do with Frank Jr., I have nothing to do with that world. I have nothing bad to say about anybody. I've never said anything about anybody in my life. I never cooperated. I would never cooperate. So it's offensive if somebody says that, because it's a lie, and there's more to it, a lot more to it than that. So, which will all come out at some point. But we take a break.
What would you say is the most traumatic, most difficult thing you went through in those years?
Just dealing with my father, just the beat downs, it was every day, and that's what people don't understand. This wasn't occasional. And listen, I wasn't an angel as a kid, so I'm not throwing this in there. When I got hit as a kid for doing something, or I did something and I came home, whatever, that wasn't what I'm talking about. I deserved that, but I didn't deserve every day being hit and yelled and screamed at and put down and have names called. That was every day of my life. It wasn't a part of my life. It was every day. And it didn't make a difference whether my father was here in Chicago or he was somewhere else. I was sitting at payphones waiting for him to call, and he would yell at me on the phone, on the payphones. So, this isn't a period of my life. This was every day. And honestly, it's crazy, because I can't get past it. And I just want people to know. I don't want anybody to feel sorry for me. I don't want anybody to. I just want people to understand what I dealt with, and I want to help people. I want to try to help people. I think I can. I really do. And that, if anything, what I got left in this world, I want to be productive, and I want somebody. I want to be able to talk to somebody, have them tell me, okay, I understand better now, or oh, that makes sense, or how can I help them in life? It's struggling, and the whole mental illness thing is needs to be discussed, needs to be talked about, and something done about it.
Did you feel like you were a good person who just grew up in this family, this lifestyle?
It's taken me a lot of years to think about myself like that, but I was a good person. I still am a good person. It's nice when people tell you that, especially people that know you well. But for so long, I looked at myself and I had no confidence in myself still. I still look at myself. I can't get rid of those memories, those thoughts. I went to claim my father's body when he died. He was in North Carolina, and I thought I was going. At the time, my mind wasn't real clear because of what I was dealing with. And so I thought like any other wake or any other services, you're going to go and he's going to be cleaned up and, shown. Well, that was me not thinking right, because they told me that he wanted to be cremated, because I was ready to bring his body back here. I was ready to do the services just because it was the right thing to do. Back then, I thought it was the right thing to do. But to see him, I needed to see him dead. I actually needed to see the body. So I went, and it was a fiasco, because I thought I was going to a morgue or somewhere, where I was going to see him. And it was a house in the middle of the block. And the FBI did not want me to go claim his body. The Federal Bureau of Prisons did not want me to go collect or see his body, which I don't know why. But it was so awkward. But I got to see him. It broke my heart to see him laying on there with an old blue blanket and his name in black marker on a white piece of paper, safety pinned to his body. I couldn't his face was full of hair. I couldn't, they don't shave you. You die to, the hair keeps growing. But it was just so awkward. But I did find peace in that by going, because I went for the right reasons, but their closure's gone. The closure left. It was a short period that I got the closure. but it was, it was odd, and but I did it, and I went, and I'm glad I went. But
did you feel like you had a choice?
Oh, I did have a choice.
No, but when you,
it was said, if you want to go, you can go.
No, but when you were a kid, getting into the mob.
No, I want to believe I had a choice. I want to believe that I pushed back and fought back, but no, at the end of the day, I shook around my father. I shook. I literally shook. My whole body would shake. For what? I mean, I was a good son. I was a good man. I was loyal. I still am loyal. I sometimes question why I'm so loyal, but I am loyal, and I'll die loyal, because that's what's important to me. Is to be a man. Is to shake somebody's hand. Is to know that your word is good, which mine has always been. And it might be the only thing, they might put it on my gravestone. That might be where it ends up. But I'm proud of what I've done in my life. I'm proud that, I raised my kids the right way. I kept them away from my dad when I came home from prison. And, I broke the cycle, if that's what it's called. But it's not at the price of my sanity. Because it's beating the shit out of me every day, and I'm not a tough guy. I don't claim to be a tough guy. I can take care of myself. I always have, but this shit's just beating me down. It's like cutting my legs out from underneath me every day. Can't sleep at night. When you can't sleep, how do you function? So it's tough. It really is, and I'm lucky to be here. There's days when I don't want to be here.
You feel like it's taking a toll on you physically?
Yeah.
And
mentally, yeah. It's. I don't have any fight left in me anymore.
Are you still married?
No, I've been divorced. Have a decent relationship with my ex-wife. She knows everything that I went through. She watched it. She saw it. She did an interview on a podcast that I have coming out. Again, this is somebody who was raised in that life. Even though she's a woman, she wasn't raised to be in that life, but she was raised around it. And she saw everything that went on. And, it's unfortunate because it affected our marriage, and it's probably the reason why we ended up getting divorced. But life is what it is. It was tough, and it's still tough. And, the craziness that's going on in the world, I'm not crazy about that. I don't like what's going on. Everything's amped up on me because of this CPTSD. So everything I think about, I think to the extreme. And it drives me crazy. It drives my kids crazy. But it's, I talk to therapists, and, it took me a lifetime to get here. It's not going to go away overnight. It may not ever go away. But it's a process, and I'm trying every day. And I've had people, good people, talk to me, talk about what I lived. I did a interview on Mike Francise's channel, and Michael gave me the opportunity to talk about something that he knew better than most people because he dealt with a lot of the same things. And he's a great man. He really is. He gave me the confidence to be able to talk about things because I'm not a talker. So, but he understood everything, but there's, people are starting to understand now what really happened because the lies are being caught now. The lies are being, the story keeps changing, and the lies are lies. So we can't change that, but all I can do is tell the truth of what happened, and it's not a happy story by no means. By no means. So I'm not trying, I won't glorify anything. I won't, that was a horrible life. And bring your kids into it, for the life of me, I can't comprehend. I mean, I look at my kids and I think, oh my God, I didn't even want them around my dad. They didn't even know, my youngest didn't even know she had a grandfather until the family secrets case. And I had to bring her, she was having therapy at the time, in therapy, because she has anxiety real bad. And it just broke my heart to see her upset because she didn't even know she had a grandfather, but I had to protect my kids from him. I mean, the threats that I had alone, the many, many threats that were lodged against me because of what other people were doing, not me, other people, like Junior. And, you know, I for some reason, the FBI and they had a problem with me. They still have a problem with me. I wouldn't cooperate. I didn't want anything to do with my father. They knew it. They knew it. My uncle told them, when my uncle found out that they were going to go talk to Junior, which he meant well, but they told him, we're going to go see your nephew and we're going to talk to him. And he told them, Kurt? And they said, no. He said, because Kurt won't talk to you. Well, it was a compliment, the highest compliment in the world coming from my uncle, but what it did is made a bigger problem because now it became a contest. Oh, really? He's not going to? Well, they never came. They never bothered me. They evidently knew I wasn't going to talk to him. But, you know, I mean, I dealt with them on our first case and I ended up in judge's chambers and got muscled by a federal judge. Basically told by a federal judge that either you accept this deal. It was a house involved in our first case, Matt Russo's house. And I had to go for depositions, almost 3 days worth of depositions. And I told, my father put stuff in our names, put stuff in my grandmother's name. And when push came to shove, I took responsibility for it. I said it was mine. Nothing was taken. Nothing, the government was able to touch anything based on my testimony.
Did your father leave you a lot of money?
No, my father didn't leave me anything. There were properties in my name from I was in high school. In fact, the federal government, you know, at the deposition said, well, you were 16 years old when you purchased this property. I had never even seen these properties. They said, what does it look like? I said, I don't know. But they, you know, I said it was mine because my way of thinking at that point was, I'm not going to lie. I'm not going to throw anybody under the bus. I'm going to take responsibility for it. For my family, for my father, for my uncle, from Junior. My grandmother was involved because my father had her name on there. And I told her, I said, listen, you don't know nothing about this. So when you go in front of them, you tell them you know nothing. Kurt, your nephew, your grandson Kurt took care of it all. And Junior did the same thing. My father and my uncle, they took the fifth. They didn't even go. So I sat there for 2 days and got badgered about all this stuff. There was a lot of money. There was a lot of money in the banks. And I said, yeah, it's all mine. And I thought at the time I was, you know, fighting for my family. And who was I fighting for? I wasn't fighting for me. I mean, I didn't, you know, my father I never got the money that I put into the banks that belonged to me as a kid. My father took that money and, you know, it's sad. It's just one thing after another. I mean, I'm jumping all over the place here, but right. it's and now I deal with, you know, surviving. And, you know, I'm not afraid of death. I'm more afraid of life than I am of death. Because I'm prepared for death. For myself, I'm prepared. Life is tougher. I don't know what to do every day. I can't function. I can't get, I can't survive.
Does the mob still exist in Chicago?
It does, but on a lot smaller level. Yeah, I mean, mostly all the people that I dealt with are dead, gone, long gone. And I still see people, and, you know, some people look at me like, you know, hey, you're responsible for what your family did. Most people look at me and say, it had nothing to do with you. But there's some people out there that still want to try to keep that life going and, you know, to each their own. So I got nothing to do with it. I'm out. I'm just trying to survive and tell my story. And I think that, you know, people are understanding the truth now based on stuff I see. But it's just, I didn't want to do this. It wasn't something I planned on doing. It wasn't something I looked forward to doing. but I have to figure out a way how to get this out, get it out of my system, because it's killing me. It's killing me. It was killing me 30 years ago. All it's done is increasingly gotten to the point where it's killing me. And I'm fighting, but I don't have the fight in me that I used to have. And I don't like the world the way it is. I just don't. I try to be positive for my family, but I don't like it. And city of Chicago is shot. And I don't like the world the way it is. So
all right. Kurt, thank you so much for sharing your story. Wish you lots of luck with your PTSD and your family, and
thank you.
hope you live a long, healthy life.
One last thing.
Yes.
My uncle made recordings before he passed. So there are recordings out there of my uncle, and it'll clarify a lot of what has been said already, where people are lying about stuff. So I'm confident that that'll clarify a lot of stuff. And I've got my fingers crossed. So thank you. Thank you for listening to me and hearing me out.
All right. Thank you, Kurt.
Thank you.